Pikmin is a weird game. Releasing in 2001 shortly after the launch of the GameCube, it was what eventually became of Super Mario 128, a tech demo designed to showcase the power of Nintendo's newest system. On the surface, Pikmin is a game about a little spaceman commanding an army of little alien plant guys to disrupt the local ecosystem. Yet beneath this cutesy and rather peculiar looking exterior lies a truly unique adventure that I think everyone should experience. I mean, there's a reason why this series has such a huge following to this day, and it all started with this game right here. I'm FibreOpticBroadbean, and this is the Unexpected Brilliance of Pikmin. The story of Pikmin is simple. Olimar, a space delivery guy, is piloting his ship the Dolphin when he collides with a meteorite, sending him crashing down onto a foreign planet. Due to the impact of this crash landing, many of the ship's parts are scattered all over the planet's surface, and it's Olimar's job to recover all of these as quickly as possible. The only problem is that the planet's oxygen is poisonous, and Olimar's life support systems will only last for 30 days, so he needs to find the parts fast. There isn't a whole lot of plot to digest here, but really, there doesn't need to be. Pikmin is a game all about exploration and finding your own way, so being stranded all alone on a planet you know nothing about is the perfect way to encapsulate this. The player, in the shoes of Olimar, has all the odds stacked up against him at this point, and the stakes are high until they stumble upon a seed of hope, if you will. As it turns out, this planet is inhabited by these plant-like creatures known as Pikmin. For some unknown reason, they seem to take a shine to Olimar and follow his every command. Whether it's charging into battle, carrying an object back to base, or just staying put, these guys will do it. This works out in Olimar's favour after he uncovers his first ship part, the engine, which the Pikmin are able to carry. This allows him to, at the very least, take off for the night, and this is where the journey truly begins. You see, the area of the game that you start off in, which Olimar names the impact site, is a relatively safe level. On your first day, there aren't any enemies, there isn't a time limit, and most importantly of all, there's no feasible way to lose Pikmin. It works very nicely as a tutorial level to ease the player into the game and teach them how to command a group of Pikmin with minimal risk. This all changes on day 2, however. From here on out, the kid gloves are off as you land in the Forest of Hope. What you'll immediately notice here is that you have a time limit at the top of the screen. With the exception of day 1, each day in Pikmin lasts approximately 13 minutes, and it's at this point that you begin to realise how stressful this game can truly be. This, when combined with the 30-day time limit that's slowly ticking down, provides a sense of urgency that just encourages you to be as efficient as possible. All of this tension, however, is juxtaposed with the ambient, relaxing background music. This game walks a very fine line between being the most nerve-wracking thing you've ever played and calming you down by letting you explore its lush environments. The most soothing theme is the one that plays at the end of each day, which feels really reflective, as if you're looking back on everything that's happened to you thus far. This is accompanied by the journal entries that Olimar writes each night, which usually either refer to what he accomplished during the day or the family that he left back home. While this game isn't particularly plot heavy, these little tidbits provide an insight into the mind of Olimar and help you relate to him as a character. It's not just the time limit that you have to worry about though, as there are plenty of other hazards standing between you and your ship parts. Most notably, you have the enemies, which are the natural predators of the Pikmin. On a first playthrough, it's likely that these guys will be the cause of your first Pikmin deaths. Every time this happens, you can't help but just feel terrible for what happened. All these Pikmin that you gather aren't just mindless soldiers there to do your bidding. In fact, you'll find yourself getting really attached to these little dudes. I don't know, there's just something about them that's just so cute and endearing, which makes it all the more impactful when you lose them. It's often a result of your own carelessness, and I'm not just talking about in battle. At the end of each day, if there are any Pikmin in the overworld who either aren't with you or aren't at base camp, they're left to fend for themselves overnight. This results in a really sad cutscene where they're eaten by their nocturnal predators just to make you feel even more guilty for leaving them behind. You also have to deal with elemental hazards like fire and water, bottomless pits, and explosions from bomb rocks. Luckily, to deal with these, you have 3 different Pikmin colours to help you out, with each having special attributes and resistances. Red Pikmin are your fighters. They're the strongest in combat of the three colours and are also resistant to fire. Yellow Pikmin are lighter than the others and can thus be thrown higher to reach areas that the others can't. For some unexplained reason, they're also the only colour capable of carrying bomb rocks, which are needed to break down stone walls and can come in handy in a pinch against enemies. Then there's the blue Pikmin, which are able to breathe in water thanks to the presence of their gills. They're very helpful to have around because of the abundance of bodies of water in the later levels. These three types are used in puzzles throughout the game, which you'll need to complete in order to find your ship parts. Early into the game, they're often left out in the open, ready to be grabbed, sometimes guarded by a bulborb or two. Later on though, the way in which you need to retrieve parts is made more complex. Sometimes you'll find one on a ledge that only a yellow Pikmin can reach, or perhaps across a pool that only a blue Pikmin can cross. Maybe there'll be fire geysers in the path that the Pikmin are trying to carry the part through, meaning that you'll need to switch from whichever colour you were using to red on the spot. To me, the most interesting example has to be in the final area, the Distant Spring. Here, you'll be travelling across some water where you'll find a ship part. The issue is that it's on a ledge that's too high for blue Pikmin to reach, so you'll need to use this yellow candy pop bud to convert your Pikmin from blue to yellow. This lets you get the part down from the ledge, but then the next dilemma is that the yellows are of course unable to carry it through the water. To overcome this, you need to use a blue candy pop bud to change your yellow Pikmin back into blues and have them carry it back to base. This has to be the most involved ship part to retrieve as far as puzzles in this game go, and I love how it makes you think a little bit. It's not just the puzzles that become harder as you get further into this game, however. As you reach the later levels, the selection of enemies becomes more and more varied too. Initially, you only really have to deal with a few bulborbs, but once you get to grips with those, the game will already be throwing something else at you. In the forest Naval, for example, you'll have to deal with fiery blowhogs, which breathe out fire, and wollywogs, which dwell in water and jump around to crush your Pikmin. I seriously hate these guys. Then, once you reach the Distant Spring, the roster expands even further to include the puffy blowhogs, which blow your Pikmin away, and the swooping snitchbugs, which can pick up and carry your Pikmin. While these guys don't directly kill your Pikmin, they're often used in tandem with other enemies to disrupt your fight. For example, they're often placed near the spotty bullbears, which are essentially much deadlier versions of the standard bulborbs encountered earlier in the game. These guys wake up very easily, so if a blowhog happens to blow one of your Pikmin into them while you're trying to be stealthy, then you are screwed. I really like the way the enemies are used in this game. It always feels challenging, at times to the point of annoyance, but it never gets to a point where it feels unfair, as there's always a surefire way to win, even if it does require a bit of trial and error to figure out. The enemies, while intimidating, don't even hold a candle to the bosses though. These guys are terrifying and can rip into your Pikmin numbers really badly if you're not careful. Ideally, you want to go into these fights with a strategy, and for a veteran player, that's no big deal. But for someone experiencing this game for the first time, the battle plan needs to be made up on the fly. Take the armoured cannon beetle for example, which you encounter in the Forest of Hope. It's this massive enemy that shoots out boulders which can steamroll your army and has seemingly impenetrable defences, taking no damage from the Pikmin being thrown at it. However, through experimentation, you'll eventually figure out the way to defeat it. This involves attacking from the front and throwing a Pikmin directly into its blowhole. Doing so will cause it to overheat and expose its weak abdomen, which is susceptible to attack. I've referred to this idea of discovering everything for yourself throughout this video, and the fight against the armoured cannon beetle is one that perfectly embodies this idea. This is just one of many excellent bosses in this game though. Both the burrowing snagrets and the beady longlegs are equally terrifying because of the manner in which you encounter them. Unlike the other bosses, which are present and visible in the overworld, these guys are hidden in the ground and air respectively. Their entrances are designed to strike fear into the heart of the player, which in turn clouds their judgment and affects their performance in battle. As such, devising an effective strategy is difficult, but still possible. With the beady longlegs, for example, its weak point is located in its body, which is very high up. Thus, you could either command your Pikmin to climb up its legs, which is risky due to said legs being its primary form of attack, or alternatively use your high-flying yellow Pikmin to defeat it. I think my favourite boss has to be the Puffstool though. You see, growing up, I never actually finished this game, and this guy is the reason why. Basically, it's a big mushroom that waddles around this area of the Forest Naval seemingly harmlessly. However, if you get too close to it, it will release its spores, which in turn possess your squadron, turning them into mushroom Pikmin. Any afflicted party members will follow the Puffstool and attack Olimar, as well as any other Pikmin that stand in their way. As a kid, I had a terrible experience against this guy, and many lives were lost that day, but now, I just think it's such a creative concept for a boss fight. Then, if you manage to collect 29 ship parts within the time limit, you'll reach the final trial. This is a short, gauntlet-style level that has you navigating through a series of obstacles that require you to use all 3 Pikmin types together. After getting through that, you're greeted with the final boss of this game, the Emperor Bulblax, and man, this guy ain't no joke. He has a really tough, rocky outer shell which is pretty much impervious to damage and has some devastating attacks. Specifically, he's able to use his tongue to whip Pikmin up, as well as leap up into the air and slam down onto the ground. Think Wollywogs, but on steroids. The only way to damage him is by having your yellow Pikmin sacrifice their lives, may they rest in peace, and having them blow him up from the inside. This then allows you to come in for the kill by throwing Pikmin onto his face, but even then, you'll be chipping away at him for a while. This fight may be long and arduous, but I think it's a fitting way to end off this game. Defeating Emperor Bulblax reveals the final ship part, which is Olimar's piggy bank containing all of his savings. This isn't actually required to beat the game though. As a matter of fact, you only need 25 parts to do that. Now, you may be wondering, what would happen if you were to run out of days and recover less than 25 parts? Well, in that situation, you're greeted with the bad ending, which is as weirdly endearing as it is mildly disturbing. Here, Olimar attempts to leave the planet with his incomplete ship and manages to take off, briefly. His ship gives out pretty quickly and crash lands once again, presumably killing him on impact. The Pikmin then find his corpse and carry it back to the Onion, which results in a strange combination of Olimar and a Pikmin being sprouted. Yeah, this one is pretty creepy. If you instead collect all of the necessary parts, but miss out the ones that aren't required, Olimar is able to successfully leave the planet, but just kinda ditches the Pikmin, leaving them to wonder if he'll ever return. It's a fine enough ending, but seeing the Pikmin just abandoned doesn't quite feel right. This is remedied by the good ending, which is naturally triggered by recovering all 30 ship parts. Here, Olimar actually says goodbye to the Pikmin before leaving them, and sets off to return to his family. As he leaves the planet, we see that the Pikmin have actually gained some independence after they start attacking a Bulborb completely unprovoked. For that reason, this is just a really feel-good ending, and gives you that sense of fulfillment that the other one was missing. Now, you've not only saved Olimar's life, but equally those of many Pikmin to come. Pikmin is a weird game, there's no mistaking that, but it's one that you just can't help but appreciate. Sure, it's not everyone's cup of tea due to the impending countdown and the stress that brings, but really? That's what makes it such a unique experience. Few other games are bold enough to mess around with time limits, but Pikmin doesn't pull any punches. But as the days tick away, what was once urgency becomes efficiency as you refine your gameplay to the point of mastery. The game hooks you in quickly with its simple plot, but compels you to keep playing with the end goal of saving Olimar always in sight. It simultaneously makes you feel the loneliness of being stranded on an unknown planet and the companionship of having a lovable army at your side at all times. It shows that, even when the odds are stacked against you, there's still hope. Even if that hope does come in the form of a little red alien plant guy.